Yes. Cool. All right. So, hi, my name's Alejandro Ramirez. From the last meeting, this time will be the first of our lecture series that we will be covering over graduate school. The first topic at hand is picking a program, contacting professors, and the GRE. So, one of the first important steps when deciding after the first step of like, I want to go to graduate school, okay, which program? So here we have an outline of what we'll do. So 3 topics we'll basically cover. So choosing a program, that's the first start, reaching out to professors, and then preparation for the GRE. And we'll discuss what the GRE is for those who aren't unaware and study tips associated with that. Okay. So again, my name is Alejandro Ramirez. I'm one of the graduate committee officers in charge of this mentorship program. Here I have some of my colleagues with me also running the program as well, and they can take some time to introduce themselves again so you know who to contact if you have any issues regarding your mentor-mentee. So who would like to briefly introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Larissa. I'm in biology and biochemistry. So if you need any specific biology and biochemistry help, I got you. But if you need any general help, I got you as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Jake. I'm also in biology and biochemistry. Pretty much same as Larissa. If you need anything in biology and biochemistry, I can help as well as any general information too.
Hey everyone, I'm Sebastian. I'm in physics. If you need help with physics stuff or general stuff, I can also help.
I'm Arnell, and I'm the engineering person. So yeah, hit me up if you need anything. Okay.
Okay.
Amrita?
Hey, so sorry. I'm Amrita. I'm a grad committee mentor as well. I'm actually a 4th year PhD student. So in bio and biochem, reach out to me if you have any questions about anything. Sorry, I just sat down.
Is there anyone else here? I can't see all the names.
I think that's everyone.
Okay, cool. All right, and once again, if you want to join our mailing list of our organization, the QR code on the left should work to get you that involved. And once again, if you haven't already and want to join our community, we have a Discord server with lots of resources and events, social events that you can hang out with us. We got a field trip coming up to the zoo. We also have a movie night where we're going to watch the original John Carpenter's The Thing. So if you're into that sort of stuff, we'll hosting that and all sorts of other movies as well. And we also have game nights on Thursdays around 8. So we usually play like Among Us, Jackbox. We've tried Cards Against Humanity, and we're going to play Codenames, this week. So again, if you're interested in just hanging out or you just want to socialize, Discord's right there. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Sebastian, who will talk to you guys about choosing a graduate program.
Okay, so choosing a graduate program. To put it in a short version, it's really complicated. Next slide, please. So first, let's differentiate a master's versus a doctorate. A master's, it's only going to be about 2 or 3 years. This will include your core classes and, of course, some elective courses that you need to get your master credits. That also include a master's thesis. And usually these programs are not always funded. You can get funding by being a TA, or another thing is mastering out for a PhD. And now let's talk about PhD. PhD, the average is about 5 years, so it's a bigger time commitment. This will also include courses. 2 to 3 years of your PhD will be dedicated courses. You also have qualifiers. So these will vary from school to school, but usually it might be a written test or like an oral exam as well. Just to give you an example, in the PhD program here in U of H, we had to pass all our core classes with B's or better to get into the PhD program, to become a candidate, sorry. Typically, your PhD will be fully funded. This funding could come from either being a TA or hopefully become an RA. Usually you're a TA for your first 2 years. Ideally, sometimes it won't work out that way. That is dependent on how much funding your group has. Next slide.
Also want to clarify one thing. The qualifiers can vary between departments as well. So that's an important thing to.
UH physics. Yeah. Actually, another example, back in my undergrad at UC Davis, the qualifier for their physics PhD was were 3 4-hour exams that covered classical mechanics, quantum mechanics, and then EM and thermodynamics, which sounds horrible. Next slide, please. Okay, so types of fundings. I kind of mentioned this briefly. There's TA. So if you're a TA, you'll be stuck. I mean, you'll have the job of teaching a lab and helping out undergrads. Again, ideally, this will be your first 2 years, assuming that your group has enough funding. And then the funding will come from the department. So you technically, at this point, work for the department. Now, then there's research assistant RA. This will be work, you'll get paid to do research. Your source of funding will be your PI or the grants that the lab has. You can also get private grants such as NSF or Ford Fellowship to pay for your RA-ship. Oh, I should also note that Seconds will be holding a workshop/seminar on the NSF graduate grant. I think Alejandro is going to be hosting that, right? Yeah. I'll take that as a yes. All right, research program. So researching your programs. You have to look up a different kind of environments that are held in different departments. A healthy department will have a variety of faculty and research disciplines. If you find some PIs that are interesting, definitely look up what they do and try to get some sort of, basic knowledge of what's going on then. It's definitely worth it to look up your school's ranking. This should not be your focal point whatsoever, but it's always good to see how competitive the school is. The higher the ranking, the more competitive the initial push to get into the program is. So, more higher ranking, your better your GPA, research experience, et cetera, has to be to get into that program. Also, ask graduate students from each department that you're interested in about what's going on. Jaded grad students, such as myself, will be extremely honest in all our criticisms of our department. Next slide, please. Okay, so choosing a program, there is a variety of factors to consider. So here are just some short ones that we put together. Gauge the environment of the work of the lab or research group that you'll be part of. What is the group like? Is your potential advisor a piece of shit? This is a huge emphasis. Please, 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 if you are going to go to grad school, try to find a cool PI. They're not a rarity, I must say. I really like my PI. I think all of us here like our PIs, but definitely be aware of, the shady PIs. There's some that will just treat you like a machine and or better yet, a cog of their research machine, not even an actual machine. So find those that have some basic human qualities. And again, this is where you want to ask the grad students of what that PI is like. And next we have financials. So this is where you have to worry about your stipend covering your cost of living. You're gonna have to pay your own rent, your utilities, your food, your gas, etc. You have to make sure that the department, and of course the PI will, your PI's grant will cover all of these things. Here at UH, at least in the physics department, the TAs get paid $19.50. This is after taxes, so it's decent-ish to live in Houston. You have enough to live in Houston and live fairly comfortably. Going to the department environment, does the department support its graduate community? There's some departments that just treat the collective graduate community as just machines or objects, and not really see you as humans. Some departments are more supportive than others. Some just expect you to get in there, do work, and get out. So again, things to look into. Social aspects. What is the grad community like? Are there fun things to do outside of school? And this will, again, vary from department to department and school to school. There's some schools that are located in the middle of nowhere. Some schools like UH are located in the middle of, a huge city. So this will differ, and also like see how it matches with your personality. Do you like to go out? Do you like to try new things? See if those things are around when you go to a new school. Going back to the topic, this kind of goes back to the school ranking, but is the program competitive? If you're the kind of person that likes that kind of competitive environment to push you, by all means, look for that competitive department, or if not, try to find a school that's a bit more, for lack of better words, laid back. Finally, do you see yourself living and working there for the duration of the program? If you're going for a PhD, that is 5 or more years of your life that you're going to have to be in this place. Are you going to be happy? And that is a rough question to ask yourself. It's really hard for me. When I came here, it was really hard to project my happiness of being in Houston for that long. I can say that I'm fairly happy here. So, but that last question is super hard to gauge. So yeah, one thing that I do want to add, when you guys get the opportunity to, you get accepted to a school and they let you have an let you visit during open house, please make the time to do so. That is crucial when it comes to selecting your programs. I went to the open house at UH and got to meet my my PI and some other potential grad students, and I really liked my labs environment and so forth. So I was really the what made me choose UH over my other schools. Actually, no, that's a lie. I got accepted to University of Hawaii was my first choice, but they were only going to pay me $1,300 a month to live in Honolulu, which is too damn cheap. The stipend. Next slide, please. Whose is this?
Oh, this one's me. All right, thank you, Sebastian. So one other thing I want to add that's not really another important factor, but something you should consider: climate. So if you are the type of person that doesn't like harsh winters, then maybe don't apply for a school that has like winters and cold weather almost year round. That's another thing. But again, not a huge focal point in a factor to consider, but like the weather can affect your happiness at a certain program. So on to the next topic, reaching out to these professors. So let's say hypothetically you look at a graduate program and you're like, okay, I found some couple of professors. Now, how do I get in contact with them? It's not required that you get in contact with them, but it's generally a good idea. So when you're looking through these department faculty list websites, the one thing you want to be aware of is that most departments are pretty bad at updating their website. Not all departments are like this. They regularly update it, but some programs, like for instance, our physics program, they don't update it like yearly. It's like they'll update it every now and then, but like you have to be sure to check, like fact check that website with like someone from the department. It's like, hey, I see that this professor is doing this topic. Is he still doing that topic? I won't name names, but I know a certain someone who was screwed over by this, and he has told us that it was something he didn't let it live down. So very important that you make sure that the information is correct on the website and is concurrent to current events. So what I would suggest you do is you make a list of professors who interest you. All right. You look at their published works. So just like some other websites may have like their selected publications, like you see on here on UH, you can click on that tab and they'll show you some of the publications that they have. You just copy that, paste it in Google, find it, and just read it a little bit. And if you have like issues with like with accessing the article behind some paywall, you can like contact us directly. We know ways around that. And UH also has the library, which can get around those paywalls as well. But again, contact us if you have issues getting access to papers. Write down questions about the research. So when you're reading the research, even if it makes no sense to you, it is very good that you write down questions about what confuses you and what you would want answered. because then you have something to ask those PIs, and you can show them that you are indeed interested, that you're going through their research, and you're not just someone who just like plucked out a name in a bag of like from a bag of names and just like, okay, I'll go with this professor. No, like professors, a good way to secure professors to make sure to convince them that you are interested in their work. So everyone should at least be aware that first impressions can make or break your chances. So the very last thing you want to do is come off as unprofessional. And this is like something that is applicable to any situation that there is even a sense of professionalism. So first things first, this proper email etiquette. There is a way to do this correctly, okay? And to make sure that like professors don't get the wrong idea about you. So, well, I'll show you an example in a few about how an email to like a potential advisor or principal investigator PI should be. So make sure that you start by introducing yourself. And also something that might not be in the back of your head, but something that you should consider is like if your email handle is something that is not professional, so like Epic Gamer or something like that. So probably best to go with something that sounds more professional. So like just like your name or something at gmail.com or something like that. Just if it's like something you use for like social events or something, probably best to use a different email. Yes?
I would recommend using your school's email, the one you were given as an undergrad, to email professors. That way you can avoid all that.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if UH gives, they only give you the alias, but Gmail would work just fine unless you can like request the school to give you an email. But yeah, just make sure your email handle isn't inappropriate. Okay, another thing, give a brief intro about yourself. So tell them about your classification. Are you junior, senior? What are your interests? Like research interests? Do you like particle accelerators or something like that? Where you're currently at, your university. And this is optional and something you could also consider when looking for professors. Mention the mutual contact who relayed their information. So what I did for when it came to selecting schools, I basically asked my PI to sit down with me and I said, okay, I want to go into graduate school for like detector physics, working with detectors. Like, can you recommend any good schools or PIs that I can work under that will like help me like fulfill this like research interest? And I'm like, yeah. So it gave me like a list of names, and then I wrote down the list of professors and their universities, and then I looked up their information online and contacted them. So that's one way of, so in the email you can say, hey, I got your contact through this professor, and so that already shows them like, hey, this is someone who is related to someone I know. Okay, and also ask questions like I mentioned. So the ones you wrote down when you were reading the research papers. However, I wouldn't inundate them with like a bunch of questions. Like everyone should know, professors can be very busy at random spots or consistently busy. So it's best not to bombard them with a thesis of questions. So I would try to limit yourself to like about 4 questions in the first email. And one of the questions should be asking about openings in their labs. So do they have funding for RA? So it could turn out that like once you get accepted into the program, there's going to be that summer period between the fall and the spring. So it would probably be awesome if like you could come in and start working for that professor, and if they got funding, like you can get paid for the summer. So something to look into. So like I mentioned, here is an example of one of my emails that I sent out. So I sent this out to, I won't name the college, but I'll say it was an Ivy League. Okay, so here I introduced myself. I'm from the University of Houston, and I mentioned what experiment I did that sort of relates to the research that I want to do. And so I asked him two research related questions, one from their website and one from like something they mentioned in one of their papers. And so, and then the last couple questions. I asked them like, hey, do you have any openings for future graduate students? And if not, do you know if there'll be any future ones or research, or how, on average, how long does it take for your graduate students to graduate? And so I've heard people recommend like, upload your CV or your resume along with the email. Ultimately, I don't think that comes down to preference. If you want to send them your resume or CV, I think that should be fine. But I personally don't send my CVs to these professors just yet. I just wait for their initial responses. And like, I think typically most professors took about a couple days to respond, and they were pretty understanding, with the exception of one professor, which led me to basically not consider his school in my search for a PhD program. So again, these emails allow you to gauge the professor through email. It's not going to be a full evaluation like you would just by talking to their graduate students, but it's a good way to see if like they're reticent to response or something like that.
Can I add something here? In regards to sending your CV. So for my letters of introduction, I guess like this, I did not send my CV, but typically the second or third correspondence that I had with that professor, they asked me for my CV. Like, so they probably will ask you like further down the line.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you have to like send it initially.
No. Yeah, I never sent mine initially, but if they asked, I'd be happy to provide it. So here's the response from this professor who sent it to me. And so, explained a lot of stuff. Okay, so he tells me more about his research, preparing some stuff, an experiment that unfortunately was declined. So that's another thing. So in my field, we work based on experiments and collaborations. So if you want to work on an experiment, but it turns out there's no funding, you got to ask yourself, am I willing to be a TA for however many years just to work on that experiment with no funding? So again, something to consider. And then he tells you that there's going to be openings in the fall and how long it takes to graduate. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Jake, who's going to talk to you about the GRE.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Never mind. Oh, go ahead. If somebody's trying to ask a question, I'm not sure. Guess we're hearing something. Somebody say something. Anyway, hey everybody. Thank you, Alejandro. My name is Jake. I'm going to speak about the GRE, which I'm sure is something that's on a lot of people's minds because it's basically an entry exam into graduate school. So if we want to go ahead and move on to the first slide, which has a good introduction to what this test actually is. So what is the GRE? Well, the GRE is the Graduate Record Examinations, typically shortened to GRE, and it is a standardized test administered by the Educational Testing Service, which is also typically shortened to ETS. There are two types. There's the general GRE, which is most commonly taken. That's the one I actually ended up taking, but there are subject-specific GREs as well, such as physics, chemistry, etc. There are some programs that require subject-specific GREs. That said, it's usually very competitive schools. I know most Ivy Leagues, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Alejandro, but I think most Ivy Leagues require subject-specific GREs. I almost applied to University of Pittsburgh, which I know required a chemistry-specific GRE as well for the program I was going to require or apply into.
For biology, actually, most of them are trying to phase out the GRE completely. So out of 10 schools that I applied to, only 2 of them even required me to upload GRE scores. So it depends on your discipline.
Yes. Yeah, like Larissa was saying, programs are starting to phase out the GRE. That said, it still is a requirement for some. The best thing to do is to check with the specific programs you're applying to and see if they require the GRE. They will state on the program description whether or not it's required or optional. Typically, I'm sorry. I think I'm having connection issues. I'm sorry. Because I keep hearing I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm having connection issues. Anyway, so as I was saying, check with your program, because typically if they are optional, they will not even look at them. They will typically just brief glance over them, and they're not a huge decision from what I have heard from professors who have talked about optional GRE scores. Let's go and move on to the next slide. Okay, so what is the GRE continuing? Some facts about the general exam. It costs $205 each time you take it. That's why it's prudent to try to take it only once. There are 3 sections. There's a verbal section, quantitative reasoning, which is basically just math. And then there's an analytical writing on top of whatever subject specific GRE you're taking, if you're taking it. Each section is scored in a range from 130 to 170, 130 being the lowest score, 170 being the highest score. And I do believe they do some sort of average for the score, or some kind of percentile scoring as well on top of each day they administer the test. So just because you score 140 on one day doesn't mean you'll be in the 35th percentile each day. It changes. You have 3 hours and 45 minutes to take the exam. It is a long exam. There are breaks in between, but it is a very long exam. So be prepared to be sitting in a room for a while taking it. The scores are good for 5 years. You can apply for a fee reduction. However, if you're going to do that, you need to do it as soon as possible. You need to register and select an exam date via the ETS website. So it basically gives you a calendar. You choose the day and you register for the exam. And then you take your exam at local testing centers, which are equipped to provide these standardized testings. All right, let's go move on to the next slide.
I do want to point out.
So in terms,
I do want to point out that there is a GRE test site at UH. So I don't know if they're doing it online still. Probably by the time you guys need to take it, like this summer, it might be in person. I'm not sure, but UH is a testing site for the GRE.
Yeah, I wasn't aware there was one on site at UH. Thank you. Yeah, because I know for mine, I had to take it off site, off my campus at like a random office building in the middle of like downtown where I was from. So it was like the weirdest thing in the world. Pull up to this like high rise, and you're just sitting here like, this is a testing site. Yeah, it's so if there's one at UH, definitely take advantage of that. So in terms of the breakdown of the test, there is the verbal section. It's 2 30-minute sections, and there are approximately 20 questions each. Now, this is basically an English section or a grammar section, vocabulary. It consists of reading comprehension, text completion, which usually is like sentence completion or filling in like a sentence that fits the most or the best, as well as sentence equivalents. And from the GRE website, specifically, this tests ability to analyze sentences and writing passages, including understanding key concepts and vocabulary in context. All right, let's go and move to the next one. Actually, and I say this here, we don't need to move back. These images on the right are a study guide that specifically is designed by the ETS, which is the company that distributes this test. I've personally highly recommend these study guides. They are structured identically to what you'll find on these tests. All right, so the quantitative reasoning section, which is basically the math portion, it has 2 35-minute sections, which are approximately 20 questions each. And these questions include subjects such as basic arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and more complicated data analyses. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next.
I also want to add one other test guide, the one I took. So there's one that's really cheap. It's called the 5-pound book of GRE practice problems. It's I think I remember buying it at Barnes and Noble for like less than $15, and it has like unquote 2,000 problems from different sections. So if that's something you're interested in, just doing a lot of practice problems and you want something cheap, the 5-pound book of GRE is something you could look into.
Yeah, and I'll stress something that Alejandro mentioned too, doing practice problems, which we'll talk about in a bit. I would honestly say that that is the best way to study for this test. You just do as many practice problems as you can and just practice how the questions are structured, because they are very, very large tests. So you really can't study any specific subject. So in terms of the final section, which is the analytical writing section, it's very different or slightly different from the other two sections. You actually write 2 essays in this section, and you have 30 minutes for each essay for a total of 60 minutes. The first essay is typically an issue essay, it's an argumentative essay. So this, from the ETS website, tests ability to communicate complex ideas in a concise and effective way, evaluate claims and evidence, support ideas using logical reasoning and relevant examples, and use standard written English to prove an argument. So we've already kind of touched on this, but in terms of study tips for the GRE, I would recommend know your baseline score. So before you even start studying, take a practice GRE and see what that score is going to be. Then you should determine what your target score should be. That's going to depend on what school you're going to apply to, what percentile you want to fall into. And I, as previously stressed, I highly recommend practice, practice, practice. Just practice a ton of practice problems. You can utilize the numerous amounts of commercially available GRE practice exams. Like Alejandro mentioned, there's a few like that are like the 5-pound test book. I know Sterling makes some, they make specific subject GRE questions. And then there is the ones that are provided by the ETS. I also recommend getting vocabulary flashcards, because there are literally questions of these very, very niche words, and they will ask you basically, what does this mean? And you have to know the definition of that word. So they sell GRE vocabulary test cards. There's also just basic vocabulary, like word of the day cards you can get. And as you get closer, practice in the same conditions as the testing environment. Just try to time yourself the same way they would time you in the testing facility, so you can be used to that pressure. Bottom line though is don't stress. I can promise you it's going to be okay. The GRE is a very daunting beast, but it's, as long as you take it seriously and somewhat study for it and don't polish it off and just go in without studying, you should be okay.
I will add one more thing. When it comes to the math section, just one thing I've learned when it comes to like these sort of tests, if the problem looks extremely complicated, that means there's a trick to it to make it easy, because these are supposed to be timed. So they're not going to ask you to do something that's long-winded in terms of a calculation. So if you see something that like some factor of X that's like has like a crazy exponential or something, like there's a trick to it, and it's about learning these tricks to like get it down and solve your questions really fast. And so that really is why you should practice a lot of these problems, so you can learn all these tricks. Okay, thank you, Jacob. So as Sebastian mentioned earlier, separate to the workshop, we will be hosting an NSF information/workshop regarding the Graduate Research Fellowship Program. This is a very prestigious award that can be applied nationally, and everyone from all sorts of different STEM programs can apply for this. So you'll be competing against other students from different universities. And so we will try to hold workshops in terms of like reviewing application materials, and we'll be sharing some of our winning applications. So so far we have about 3 NSF GRFP recipients, including me, so I can help you guys out. So we have me from physics, we have one from earth and atmospheric science, and one from engineering, I believe. So we have some variety in terms of applications. And again, this workshop will be open to undergraduate and graduate students. You do not need to be in the program to sign up for this workshop. We'll send out an email with a Google form to sign up for this on June 16th. And this is not required for you to attend. This is completely optional, and this is separate from the program. So with that, we'll conclude and move on to answering any questions y'all may have.
What time is the workshop for the fellowship? It's going to be 5 p.m. exactly a week from today. Do you guys remember how long it takes to get your scores back? I don't recall it taking very long for me.
No, I got
think
a
it was
mix.
you guys. I think mine. I got the official ones in 2 weeks, but they give you like the scores instantly for the verbal and the quantitative. But then including the writing, it takes time because they
Yeah.
have to have somebody read the essays.
Yeah.
You get the official like scores, I think, within 2 weeks, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
I just want to add for the GRE, for like the three of you that are in physics, you're even here. I highly recommend going through the old physics GREs, and I guess the same can be applied for chemistry if they have those, but definitely go through old GREs as well for practice.
Yeah, the
How it's
physics GRE, if you're looking for a book for that, there's a really good one called Conquering the Physics GRE. I use that one, and they teach you the theory in there as well as some practice problems. So
Yeah, I threw mine away because it gave me nightmares.
I use it as a paperweight. It's actually still here in this house.
I left mine in Florida, and they're not coming back.
Damn.
Acid went to the shadow realm.
Any other questions?
Hey y'all, it's Emma. I was thinking of a question that maybe our undergrads might want to know. I recall something about waivers for, I don't know if it's applications or GREs. It's been a little while for me. I might just be thinking of the SACNAS conference, but
yeah, so we mentioned in the GRE, I don't know if it was said, but it was a bullet point that there is an application of sorts that you apply for a fee reduction waiver. So I believe they reduce the cost of the exam by like 50% or something along those lines. But I think those you have to apply ahead of time. Like I tried to apply for one and they told me like the deadline had passed. So you got to look at their website to like basically obtain that fee reduction. And so you don't pay the full 200. And I know that can be like, that's like something that's a really, I don't know, I guess kind of shitty, costs a lot of money.
Yeah, I think usually the federal or like the ETS, I guess, fee waivers are need-based. So yeah, oh dang. On says the fee waiver takes time. I got approval after I took the GRE, so it might be a little bit late for you guys this round, but keep that in mind for next year. You want to really apply early if you want to get that fee waiver. As far as application fee waivers, if I know that I've been Emma and I have been advertising the SACNAS conference in the Discord. If you do end up coming to the conference with us, if you do end up, getting that registration scholarship, or if you get funded through the chapter, through some UH entity, graduate schools do give out fee waivers at the SACNAS conference. And I know me personally, I went and got a bunch of fee waivers and I applied to 10 schools. What would have costed me over $1,000 ended up costing around 300. So definitely take advantage of that.
Oh, also, it doesn't hurt to ask the department through email, like, hey, do you offer fee waivers? Worst they'll say is no.
Mm-hmm. Big true.
Any other questions?
All right, guys, I'm gonna stop recording, and then if you have any questions, you can stick around. If not, you're free to go. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank y'all.